or in your food or not our food, or that's not important, but hey, this crap over here is really food and you should eat it. And you did all that. What happened? You know what I mean? That's what I wanted to check you on for mindset and how you got to where you are now and what to you right now seems sensible when really, you actually need to be looking at what's logical. That's why I stopped you.
Thanks.
No.
Kind of half-hearted thanks. I'm more interested in, that's always good to keep an open mind and why I think the paths I think in. But I think it's a better conversation to like just tell me why it wasn't sensible, the thing I
Oh,
specifically
well, that's because you're
referenced.
just not well read enough in
Well,
current science, and how that like even from the point of Einstein when he came out, and they praised him to the heavens in the
See,
mainstream.
I'm not really interested in what you're saying right now. I'd rather just talk about things, not people.
Well, that's
well,
that's the
well,
thing is actually what happened with that person declaring something about reality, and at the same time, the things that were not brought to the front of the news so that you could also see that there are hundreds of scientists who completely disagreed with Einstein at the time. And they published books called "100 Authors Against Einstein." And you've never heard of it, I'm sure. It's because you just were not exposed to the truth.
Do you forget what I
well,
originally said? Is that why you won't talk about
yeah,
it?
we were talking about the spin of the day, so it's less intuitive to say that actually the whole Earth is spinning in the opposite direction because all you see is the sun coming and going. It would be basically to assume, oh look, the sun is rising and setting. Oh, it's coming and then there it's going. That's what's causing the approaching of the light and the dimming of the light, right? That's your base position, even absent all other context. Like the scenario when if you're on an island in the middle of nowhere and you knew no one and you saw a sunrise and a sunset, what would you think? You wouldn't think, oh, you know what? The whole earth is spinning underneath me in the opposite direction of all the motion I see. That's counterintuitive.
Well, you also wouldn't have any reference because the Earth is not spinning underneath our feet. So the reference point is not there, making the thought obsolete. It's instilled, indoctrinated, taught.
No, I think it's
Insert
it's base. It's
insert
if you're a baby and you think about it long enough for 100 years, you might not figure it out. But
What's that,
So
Alan?
wait,
you
so
had
now
if you had some writing and people were studying it longer, you would just figure, hey, I'm in the woods. Everything's still. All the trees are still. Sometimes an animal moves. But if I spin around, everything spins around me. Then you look up at the sky. You don't need to rely on people's work or people's mistakes, or you could come
but
to that conclusion.
but then you'd conclude that literally the whole world revolves around you, as everyone who ever looked up has concluded previous to heliocentrism.
It's called
You know,
solipsism.
the whole
Congratulations.
universe moves.
Well, that's what everyone assumed all the way through. That's what everyone assumed from ancient technology. That's what all the old ancient flat Earth cosmologies were. Geocentrists. The whole world revolves around us. That's what it appears the way that everywhere you look. That's why they had to invent ridiculous theories to just maintain what's called the Copernican principle, which is the philosophical belief that humans aren't at the center. So they do everything in science to make other conclusions to not accept that one, and they call that science.
Are you talking bad about those Greeks?
but they do it out of modesty, Shane. And no, I was going to say, Stone, insert definitions of kinematics and dynamies in there.
Absolutely.
'Cause
And thanks to TM for posting most recently up on the pill there, the history of the Universal Pictures CinemaScope, etc., that you're seeing right now, which is nothing but constant subliminal reminder you live on a globe in space and you're spinning. Don't forget. You know what I mean? It's the first thing you see before you watch every single movie you've ever watched from Universal Pictures. It's the first thing. It's right there in front of you. It's got to be for a reason, and it's not because Universal Pictures likes the globe. You know what I mean? They're about making movies, not being in space and looking at the Earth from far away. Like seriously, like you said, you look up at the sky, and that's how you know. But you looked in the wrong direction, or only one direction, I should say. Maybe, perhaps, go look at a really large lake with a really shallow water level to it all the way across. You know what I mean? Something where you can like see their side, you can see this immense flat slab of water in front of you. And if you put, like Alan was talking about, that you put the kinematics together and you realize this whole spinning around every 24 hours thing matched up while you're doing 30 kilometers a second around the sun in this other much larger circle, you necessarily should see proof of that on Earth in terms of motion. And what you don't ever see is anything in that lake moving according to a 6-hour sinusoidal cycle, 6 plus 6 plus 6 plus 6, in terms of the vector analysis of us actually moving through space with what they say is going on. That the water itself should be shifting from side to side with a 24-hour periodicity, 6 hours to the left and then back to the middle, 6 hours to the right and then back to the middle, because there's an acceleration there of 2.1 centimeters per second squared on average. So it actually gets higher than that, where the water should be pushed to the side in like transverse to the direction of our travel, our net direction of travel. And you just don't see it because it's not there because we're not moving, dude.
I never asked someone who thinks the Earth is flat. Would you care to tell me what your best explanation for tides is?
Oh yeah, for sure. You should look up a guy named what is it? Fake
Well,
Flip.
before you even answer that, Stone, what would
Sure.
be your explanation for tides?
Oh
Mainstream
man.
model, dude. The moon.
Yeah, but what does the mainstream model say? Do you know?
I mean,
It pulls
explain
on Earth's
something that
water.
I don't understand seems pointless because you seem to only believe in the globe because, that's the current thing, like Stone was saying. Everybody else does it, so you want to be part of it too.
So
None
you
of my
Like,
think
arguments
when it
have been
started
that.
believing in flat Earth, you just hop on board.
so you
None of
think
my
the
arguments have
moon
been that though.
Guys,
I've
give
never
me one
What the hell?
second.
fielded.
Evan,
so you think the
Evan,
moon is the
how old are
sole
you?
influence on
Evan,
top?
Evan, how old are you, Evan? If you don't mind me asking.
28.
You're 28? Got you. All right, go ahead, continue. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off. I just wanted to get some age behind the
Well, you
voice.
haven't really offered a whole lot of proof why you believe in the globe or anything like that. And you say, you think it's, you know, spinning because of day and night cycles, which really wasn't all that great of an explanation. I mean, do you got anything to kind of back up your stance on anything?
Well,
Or do you
I
want to
think
learn what your theory says about tides?
yeah, I think that's why you asked about the tides, because although
Yeah, I'd like
there's no
someone who
lake
knows.
motion for that, the tides are said to be caused by Earth's motion. So I think that's why he was asking about that. Shane, do you know anything about said tide?
I know the heliocentric model usually. So what they predict is actually two completely different things. You have the equilibrium tidal theory, which is simplified, very constant. They're saying all the tides are caused by the Earth, the sun, and the moon's gravity and pull on the Earth. You get solar and lunar tides. So you get this semi-diurnal tidal bulge on either side, a solar bulge and a lunar bulge, and the moon and this Earth hula hoops through that tidal bulge, and that's how you get the tides. That's what equilibrium tidal theory says. But that assumes constant velocity, no continents, an ocean responds instantly to all gravitational forces, and that there's no motion and that there's no topography. So there's a lot of assumptions in that theory. It doesn't actually predict anything. They don't do anything with it. That's kind of like the fantasy story, how they tell what works for the dynamic tidal theory, meaning what's actually working. So the other one that actually works is the dynamic tidal model, which takes into a present, continents, Earth, the basin shape, the underlying topography, the inertia of actual water, and then it uses the tides as shallow water, which interact with the sinusoidal predictions, and that's how you get actual tidal predictions. So the model actually just uses what's there. So the rising and falling of all the tides were in accordance with the sinusoidal patterns of the sun and the moon, and they use that to interpolate and predict and make sinusoidal predictions through different interpolations. They're nothing to do with gravity and the sun and the moon. Now, if you go through the actual math for what is the equilibrium tidal theory and how the sun and the moon are pulling on the Earth through gravitational and centrifugal forces, you find out that actually, even though the sun and the moon are separated by such a vast distance, that the moon exerts a 2.1 or I think 2.1 tidal force, lunar tidal acceleration, which means it's that much more exerting a force than the sun. And that actually, what they say that when the highest high is actually spring and neap tides, so then the highest high is spring and neap, and those don't coincide with any proximity of the sun and moon. What they actually coincide with is the moon's phases. And what's the moon's phases? Well, it actually that determines the solar and lunar proximity. So what they've done this guy's the gravitational theory under what is undoubtedly a dynamic cause of the sun and the moon's proximity over a flat Earth, because when they coincide together, you get the highest tides. What they say mathematically in the gravitational world is that actually that's constructive gravitational wave interference, and they mathematically add the gravitational force of the sun and the moon together into one, and they say that's what's causing the neap tide. That's the actual definition. Now, you asked what actually causes tides, because we had to first explain what your theory says and how that actually doesn't work. The problem with all this is that the actual high tide doesn't correspond with the sun or the moon's proximity over Earth at all. It's actually a 90-degree offset. So you have if it's actually proximity of the sun or the moon, then it would follow the sun and the moon. You would have an actual tidal bulge, and in reality, there is no tidal bulge. That's only part of equilibrium tidal theory. How it actually works is you have these points called amphidromic points or tidal nodes, which are spots of zero tidal amplitude. So like there's no fluctuation from high tide to low tide. The high tide kind of fluctuates around these amphidromic points or tidal nodes, and then you get the highest areas of tidal amplitude around like the coast, and where you get highest highs and the lowest lows. And what actually drives the amphidromic points, nobody knows. And there's someone in published a paper with equilibrium tidal theory, said it actually has to do with Coriolis in the winds somehow reach down from the sky and cause the amphidromic points, but that's that's probably not the cause. We don't actually know what the cause of the amphidromic points, but we know those are the physical driving factor on Earth of tidal amplitude, and we can make an argument for the nature of the proximity of the sun and the moon when you have sort of an electric sun and a magnetic moon, and then when they're coinciding, you get electromagnetic interference coincided by, say, the Elias effect during eclipses, which is a peculiar effect this also has on pendulums. But then we can say that's what actually causes high tides, when we actually say that water responds to magnetism, and even the salt water has the highest tidal reaction. So that's how we say the magnetism or this proximity of the sun and the moon would actually be a more convincing tidal force for the dynamic cause. What do you think about that, Ed?
I think right at the end is where you stopped completely losing him, Shane. I mean, let's just put it to him in a simplistic way on how the mainstream is not correct, and here's how you know. A skill testing question, Evan. Do you know of a freshwater lake anywhere, regardless of size, that has a tidal schedule? Because if you do, then you would be the first one to find one, and that is because gravity is not a factor. If it were a factor, it would be affecting all bodies of water, not just oceans.
What do you think, Evan? Cat got your tongue?
What's the question?
Oh my goodness gracious.
Yeah, he was actually answering your question, if you were paying attention.
Yeah, you asked about
Yeah.
tides, and I wanted to answer. So yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I like your explanation. I'll have to do some research. I don't think it's necessary to first go into the globe model, because you did kind of start losing me when I just asked you a question and your immediate thing is to say something else, and it's like I'm listening to you, but I can't. I mean, I'm not talking for 4 minutes uninterrupted
Yeah,
when people ask me questions.
exactly. You weren't able to follow all of that, and we're all right with that. And I hope it did spur you on to actually go and get some
I
real
chose not
answers.
to.
Go check out
I will.
Infodromic Points and a guy named Fake Flip on YouTube. Although I can't seem to remember currently what his buddy's channel is. The Aussie guy who did all that stuff about southern rotation. You guys remember that dude? I can't remember his name right now. Anyways, Fake Flip has a 3-parter on his YouTube channel talking all about the causes of tides, and he does a beautiful job explaining all this stuff. You'd love it.
Yeah, but you ask what we think causes the tides, and I had to first say what I don't think causes the tides, what everyone else in the world thinks
Oh,
causes
yeah,
the tides,
for
and then
sure.
I explained what I think and how that differs from what I just said.
Oh,
Thought it
totally.
was relevant. Although
Context is excellent.
But why?
I
Why do you
get the
have to?
point. Well, I get the point of talking for 4 minutes when you ask me a question. I mean, that's legit.
But why do you have to say something other than the answer to the question? Like, why do you feel you have to do that when I ask you a question?
Well,
Yeah.
I
I
feel like
feel
what
like
I
that
gave was
just
my
slows everything down.
no, that was all my required answer. I had to give all that. That's how I feel.
Yeah, I'm asking, why do you have to give all that?
Because it's a very complicated subject and a couple words ain't going to cut it.
Hey, Evan,
Exactly.
for you to have comprehension, what do you need?
Perception? I don't know.
You need
Consciousness?
you need understanding. You need to understand something so you can comprehend something. Would you agree upon that? So the
Yeah.
reason he tried to explain this to you is so you would have context. You would have something to reference because we are assuming here that you don't have the context or the reference, the substance to comprehend. So now hopefully you have more understanding so you can get more comprehension. Does that answer the question?
I appreciate you talking down to him in my stead, though. That was cool.
What'd you ask me at the end?
I'm sorry, I apologize. No disrespect.
Did you ask me something at the end? I couldn't hear you.
No, that was a statement. No, not a question.
Evan, I have a question for you. So if the Earth isn't curving, then what is it?
Not a sphere, not a ball.
Right, exactly.
Right.
So you can take if you can shine a laser 12 miles, and there's 100 feet of missing curvature, right? Because in 12 miles there's 100 feet. That's globe math. So if there's no curve, then the Earth is what? It's pretty simple.
You already asked me this. You just asked me the same
No,
question
it's
twice.
Brian asked you, but I'm so what is so difficult about that for you? And then
I'm unconvinced by these videos.
right, okay.
What?
And then so the other question is, what is the medium of space? It's our other favorite question in this room.
What kind of space? Outside, outer space,
What is the
beyond my
medium of
ionosphere.
space? What do quote unquote spaceships use
Oh.
to propulse themselves off of?
That's which question you want me to answer?
I just want to know what the medium of space is
It's the same.
It would be.
under your
It's what?
model.
Man, what? What do you ask a question? What's the
Wild,
medium
eh,
of
bro? It's
space?
just wild. They come in here and they want to
More,
fight about shit, and they
no,
No, you can't. You
ask a
keep run on
simpler and
certain
more
things.
direct question. He's asking you.
Yeah, and stop talking when
essentially-
you ask a question.
He's asking you essentially: is space, outer space, a pure vacuum, or is it something else?
space a vacuum.
I would say no, but 99. Yes, but no. Mostly, but not completely.
Can anybody here? Can you be mostly but not completely pregnant? Is that a thing?
Touche.
Wait,
That's hilarious.
in 2025, you can identify as a lot of shit.
Yeah, I
It's
guess.
mostly
What even is a
somewhat
woman,
kind of
dude?
pregnant. Could be.
Okay.
Could be.
Okay,
Nick
so
doesn't
hold
like
on,
the
hold on.
absolutist, so I'll say no
So
for Nick
space
because he
is
doesn't like when people talk like that.
So according to your model, space is a 10 to the negative 17 torr perfect vacuum, a much more perfect vacuum than your Dyson vacuum cleaner. Now, imagining that propulsion can happen in that kind of scenario is totally wild, and really requires the 4-year-old mind of yours to have been books about outer space and stuff, because to even think that a rocket could propel off of a vacuum is wild. It's totally wild.
You know what's more like incredulous is that Earth's atmosphere is down here, one atmosphere, and then up there next to the almost vacuum, it's thin and just.
I think we're
Right.
cracking
That's
the
the harder
surface,
one to
gentlemen.
believe.
So here we go.
What's
So here we
The
go.
rocket propelling is.
What's incredible?
That's a bad argument.
What's incredible about that is that like we're going to tell you is that is the only example of a pressurized system next to a vacuum without a container. So a Coca-Cola can, an airplane, hot air balloon, all of these pressurized systems, scuba diving gear, all of these pressurized, a vac chamber, all of these pressurized systems have wait for it, Brian, you want to tell them what all of those pressurized systems have?
It's a container, but Here's the thing, man. You got to let the guy talk too. So, Evan, you
I'm
said,
just, he doesn't give a fuck. He's just fucking
oh,
with
hey,
us.
hey, hey, Waters.
Nah, Evan's a
I
nice
care if
lad.
you. I care
Oh,
if you
Ev-
cut me
okay.
too.
Sounds all right.
So,
Sounds like he doesn't care.
so
I'm
Evan,
sorry.
you said something was incredulous. What exactly is that we don't understand?
I think I used that word in like the wrong tense, but like his incredulousness would be more valid if he was talking about what I mentioned because the rockets in space, I don't see why you would think there'd be a medium for rocket propulsion. Do you think planes on Earth are mostly using the air behind them to push off of when they're rocket engine
Yes, a
planes?
plane
Yes.
needs air, a boat needs
Yes.
water, a car needs the road, a medium
Yes.
is required for propulsion.
Yes. I
100%.
No,
do.
it's
They
not.
do. Yes,
No, it's not.
airplanes move air. That's why they propel. Yes, that's how airplanes work. But
So
You have to have a brain to think.
could you replicate this on Earth? Could you make a vacuum chamber on Earth to do your own experiment to find out who's right about this?
yes,
Yep,
yes,
it's
Yeah,
called
they
Dyson.
actually have,
I think,
because
Dyson.
Brian put one up top with flies inside of a vacuum chamber, and the
yeah,
flies can't fly.
yeah. I put.
No shit, the flies can't fly.
Why?
yeah. But
Sorry.
how about But you
Why
can't have
can't they?
propulsion.
It's not the same thing. One's lift. Rockets
It,
don't use lift in outer
how,
space.
dude, how do you think
They
dude?
both need air, is the point.
How do you think
No,
the
they
rocket
don't.
gets a direction?
Hey,
Uh,
I got a question.
Offsetting
Hold on,
itself
Evan,
with
Evan,
rudders,
Evan,
with
hold on,
propeller rudders.
hold
It's got to
on, Evan.
squirt it out
What
the
are
other
the
way.
rudders? What are the rudders doing, bro?
Hey, Nick, hold on, wait, hold on,
It
Evan, hold
depends what
that
way you.
thought.
They got to
If
have a
we
medium to work.
if we use bees, because bees don't fly like and I just want you guys to think about this. I know no one has the answer, maybe you do. But if we use a bee instead of a fly in this experiment in a vacuum, bees and flies, they have different mechanisms in let's say levitation.
It won't work. You want to know why? Because it turns out flies are the only ones that can survive this kind of environment. It's freaking kind of trippy that they live.
That's interesting.
Wait, this
That's very
guy,
interesting.
he's under the impression that a rocket doesn't need air. So yesterday a rocket launched. It was one of Bezos' rockets, right? And then the return piece of it was returning back down to the Earth. How did it slow its descent to the Earth to land on the platform in the middle of the ocean?
Okay. Okay. Thank you for asking a clear question. Now, before I answer, let me tell you why flat Earth is wrong. Hold on. Let me get my journal. Give me a couple seconds.
Ho ho ho.
I
It's
like you,
valuable
Evan.
Let me tell you
context.
why
It's
flat
valuable
Earth is wrong.
context.
If the flat
All
Earth,
right,
if the Earth is
let
flat,
me
Nah,
therefore
let me get my journal.
non
he's
sequitur.
he was
Okay, let
joking
me answer the
around.
question.
He
Let
was
me answer the
japing with
question
us,
about
boys.
Elon.
Yeah, answer that, please.
All right. So Elon's got this supercomputer called Dojo, and it's like a super AI, and it controlled the mechanism and the perfect exactly.
For
You guys
sure.
get
Well,
that?
definitely, yeah. When
That,
SpaceX
that
landed that rocket on the water, that video was not AI. I mean, it just didn't look like.
it's not the AI, it's what the flames are propelling against is what is the point of the
Oh,
question.
we got Rocket Boy in here, Hellcat. He's
Hello.
he's a
Sorry.
he's a rocket connoisseur, man. He can tell us how everything can fly without a medium.
So I posted an image in the chat. I can put it up.
Oh,
Uh,
Hellcat's back. This is great.
where'd I? There it is.
Wait, didn't any of them answer
So
the question? How did the rocket slow its descent down to Earth if the rocket is not dependent on a medium?
Probably a
Right.
parachute.
No,
it
Did you
was a
see one?
propulsive landing.
No, I didn't
it's
see it.
It was a propulsive landing, and
Like,
again,
yo,
the
so
engines. I've actually brought this up to TM before.
rockets do need a medium.
The engines on that rocket are the kinds that are optimized more for vacuum than sea level,
For
which
vacuum, they're
means
optimized for vacuum.
yes, you can be optimized for a vacuum.
Yeah, the engine
That's
for a vacuum just means a lower pressure, lower atmos, lower density of air. That's all it means. It doesn't
yeah,
mean it's
lower.
flying in a place
Okay.
that's devoid of
So
a medium.
So Hellcat, I got a question for you. So when the space shuttle program launched the space shuttle, each space shuttle 4.5 million pounds, right? So how much
hmm
thrust is required to lift that space shuttle?
There would be 4.5 million pounds of thrust would be required to lift a
Right.
4.5 million pound rocket.
Correct. So the entire launch platform, the chain link fence, all of that survives 4.5 million pounds of thrust. Like, are you fucking kidding yourselves? Like yourself? So you actually so then you're convincing yourself. You should now be immediately convinced that the space shuttle does not weigh 4.5 million pounds.
What, like, I don't get what you're saying. The launch platform was on purpose. They sprayed it with water to minimize the vibrations because sound travels differently in water.
So, but it survives 4.5 million pounds of thrust.
Well, they also have a flame trench, and it's not 4.5 million pounds. It's
Guys loaded with
upwards of
answers.
7.
A flame trench. Okay, it's wild.
I mean, you can go and watch
They
them.
really have answers for you guys for everything. It's crazy, hilarious. Anyway, no, I don't need to go and watch anything, dude. I'm
They have
good.
answers. They got explanations. They don't have
Explanation, yeah, it's
repeatable
wild. It's not-
demonstrations.
Because you guys don't
There
ask
are-
good questions. All you have is
there are-
your own personal.
They
You
don't
can't believe it.
have.
That's all you
They
have.
don't have repeatable demonstrations. You can build a flame trench in your yard. You can
That's not what I'm
like
talking about.
do
I'm
this
talking
with a
about a
model
rocket
rocket.
functioning in a spot, in a location, in a vacuum with no medium. You've yet to show me that.
Well, that's
TM, do you see the image that I posted up in the pill?
What is an image going to do for me?
So
Let's be
the
fair.
cham-
Let's look at its
Hey.
image. Bear
So
with
the
us.
chamber.
Bear
So
with
the
us,
rocket.
If
Okay,
it's not on the
let's look
internet,
at
it's
this.
not real.
What are we looking at here?
You know, fucking
So the rocket
sucks.
has moved forward, and the chamber is not completely filled. It's not even close to completely filled.
What
No,
do
it
you
hasn't
think is
even moved yet.
completely filled? And
That's
what
a
do you think that
burst.
is? That's just an image. Is there a video that goes with this?
Yeah, there's a video
Yeah,
there.
there
Yeah, I
is.
got
This
the
is-
There
video.
is. It's a
And
pretty
this is
I'm
supposed
gonna
wacky
to be
attach
video.
it.
and this is supposed to be a rocket inside of a vacuum chamber.
Uh-huh.
Well, for the first moment, yes, but after it begins to exhibit thrust, then the pressure explosively goes upward.
Why won't you post the whole video?
So why does it move in the
They
first
have to be
place?
deceitful
It's a
Why
really
do-
because
long
it's a
video.
pressure. Because the firecracker is sealed, it bursts open, and then that's it. Rockets aren't shooting off little explosions one at a time. It's a continuous propulsion stream.
right.
You're not getting that. You're not giving me that. It's not a continuous propulsion.
That picture is the phase of continuous propulsion, and it's moved
No, it's
before the
not.
thing
It's
has
not.
equalized. Yes, it
It's
is.
not.
That's not a firecracker.
It's
That's
visually
a
and
rocket.
demonstratably not. That's not a rocket. It's a
Okay.
firecracker inside of a man-made
Okay,
chamber.
hold on, guys. That's a lot of and I think there's a little more context that needs to be provided here. So you see, what you're looking at there is chemical thrust, right? Um, when we're talking about out in a vacuum, it comes down to a different equation. It's not about pushing against a medium anymore. It's about ejection of mass out the back of the unit. And again, this is where NASA offers us a bajillion different theorems and another technology that has not yet been discussed, and that is the ion thruster. In both cases, the one that you're looking at in this picture here, and in the case of the ion thruster, NASA and the gang have been throwing equations by the wheelbarrow load at us, for those who read the material, having to do with the exchange of the mass and what they call the inertial moment of sending it out the back of the craft to propel the craft forward. And the problem here is supply and ratio. When you look at a guy like Zero Action Lab, it's actually called Action Lab, but I call him Zero Action Lab on YouTube. There's a demo where he's got a can of Sprite in a vacuum and it bursts. And when it does, even the very first frame when it's bursting, the reason the can moves slightly is because of the mass that is being shot out in one direction away from the can as it bursts. And the ratio is so close between the amount of mass going out the back, which is nearly the entire contents of the can at that moment, right? And the weight of the can, which is just a really thin aluminum shell, right? Its mass is diddly squat. So when you send a shitload of mass in an instantaneous moment out the back of the Sprite can, it moves the can forward a little bit. And this is all happening before we talk about whether it's still a vacuum in there. Because I'm fully prepared to accept that at that point, sure, there's still a vacuum there because all we're talking about is an exchange of mass in terms of an inertial moment of explosive expansion of the back of the can. Back to NASA for a sec, guys. Follow me here. The ion thruster is very much the same kind of thing. They ionize a gas and they hyperpolarize it and hypervoltage it, and then they send it magnetically out the back of the craft in what's called an inertial moment. And they're telling us that, okay, that's what's moving the craft. However, nobody has the presence of mind that I've seen far and wide to consider the ratio. That we're talking about a craft in terms of satellites that are like upwards of 100 pounds, but the inertial moment, the mass of what's being sent out in a fraction of a second in an impulse in an ion thruster, for example, or even this one in the picture, is the merest fraction of the total mass of the craft, such that actual acceleration would net out to diddly squat. So when you're looking at things like permanent satellites that are supposedly maintaining their orbit at Lagrange points around the Earth, in orbit around the sun, and solar winds and other things can knock them to the side or out of stasis, you know what I mean? And they're going to have to use a little bit of thrust to get back into that spot. The point is that they're going to have to use a lot of fucking thrust to get back into that spot constantly, and they would run out of it in a matter of days, yet somehow, miraculously, years later, these satellites are allegedly still up there in space, keeping themselves in position with some kind of mass that they've stored up on board, and we don't know where because it's not in the plans. You know what I mean? It doesn't actually add up in terms of the net physics and the demands you need in terms of ratio and thrust to do that with a craft in a complete vacuum. It just doesn't add up. Okay, guys? So this argument about is there any vacuum still in this chamber with this picture that F6 just put up, it's just not relevant. What you need to be looking at is the inertial moment and the total mass being shot out the back of the craft and what kind of acceleration that's actually going to yield. And the answer is diddly squat.
So I agree with you 100% on that. That image that he put up there. I just watched a short video on it. I think TM posted it up there as well. You can clearly see that whatever the reaction is here, you can get a chemical reaction to light on fire inside of here. I've already conceded this is where we came up with you can't fly anything in a vacuum. But you can clearly see that this ring here that you got here is not only attached to something there, but as it comes off of it, it is touching the top of the cylinder as well. But it doesn't go very far, and you can clearly see the buildup of the force of this and the smoke build up in this chamber. So I don't. It was a valiant effort there, Hellcat, but it didn't really get you what you were looking for because there's
Brian,
that in space.
with TM's video here, this one that's 6 seconds long, right, with the syringe and the gas blowing out the back that he heated with a laser to cause it to explode, you'll notice that immediately in like the first frame or two, as the gas is blowing out a syringe, the syringe actually does move a minute amount.
It does.
And then there's pressure in there, and then it has something to push off, and then it moves like fuck. And that's what you're seeing. You're seeing the two different scenarios, one after the other. There's a bit of mass coming out, ratioed against this huge mass of a syringe, and it causes this tiny, almost imperceptible amount of acceleration. And then, as it continues to explode, pressure goes up in the system, then there is something to push off of, then it actually really does move like fuck. Those are both of the scenarios in the same 6 seconds. 7 seconds. You can see them both, and they're telling you the truth.
It needs to be in a closed container, man. If you can get a box around that, that's why I said all they had to do was put a little metal box behind that the engine there, and they had something to thrust off of.
Stone, let me ask you a question. In your story with the can, does the pressure that's the vacuum, that's containing it, does that change when the can explodes? I was a little confused on your analogy.
Okay, so yeah, look, initially the can is in a box, just like this one TM posted for 7 seconds. Okay, he's dropping the pressure, dropping the pressure, dropping the pressure. Eventually, there's enough psi on the can in terms of difference outside to inside to cause the can to rupture. Right? There's so much pressure inside the can relative to so little pressure outside the can, it breaks open. And that's where the initial explosion and the direction that the Sprite inside the can takes away from the can. At
Okay,
that first initial moment, the can moves in the other direction. And it moves a lot because the ratio of the mass in that first initial moment is nearly the contents of the entire can, and the mass of the can is diddly squat. In fact, it's far less than the mass shooting out the back of it. So you witness acceleration in that first moment, regardless of whether there's a total vacuum in there or not. It's just an exchange of inertial moment, shooting the mass out the back.